This meeting of the G20 and South Africa's presidency continues in Johannesburg today with a special guest in the form of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres addressing delegates from the bloc of nations. Our business editor Xolani Mbanjwa joins us now live from Sandton to tell us what we can expect. Xolani, very good morning to you. So a big day for South Africa, also considering that last year you had Antonio Guterres come to the BRICS summit and he's back in the country again, and this time with the G20 presidency that South Africa has taken over. What can we expect from him?
Good morning, Aldrin. Well, it's really a good mood here around Catherine Street. It's been a tight security since Monday, but much tighter today as more delegates are joining, including the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And of course, he will be back in South Africa next year for the summit here in November. And it's a series of meetings, this being the first one, starting on a high note with the deputy finance ministers and central bank governors meeting today after the ambassadorial meetings the other day. On a very high note with the UN Secretary General, we're expecting him to take a line on what they expect as the United Nations when it comes to South Africa's presidency of the G20. There is a lot expected, of course, in this presidency, as many people are looking to South Africa to take a good look and review the workings of the G20, which is an opportunity which doesn't come often, but it has come under the South African presidency, and that is important outside of the issues that are on the agenda that South Africa are putting forward. So a lot is expected from him in terms of South Africa making sure that when it leads this powerful bloc of nations, it does so for the good of the world, for global peace, and to make sure that the most vulnerable are actually taken care of in all the decisions that will be taken over the 230 meetings until the summit in November next year.
Well, the second leg of this meeting as well is that meeting that will be taking place between the ministers, the finance ministers, as well as the central bank governors. What is on the agenda when it comes to that?
Well, in the next half an hour, we're going to hear from the leader of the finance track, which is a very important track that is meeting today, as far as Duncan Peterson, who is the DG of the National Treasury, is really taking us through what's going to be the agenda that is expected at 9. It's a very important engagement because currently we are seeing a world that is beset by geopolitical tensions. Global growth is low, and we are seeing unemployment at high levels, and of course a high inflation and a sluggish really growth when it comes to that, tempered by interest rates that do not want to cool off. So there is a lot that is expected from the decision makers from the 20 bloc of nations, including the African Union, the European Union, the likes of the World Bank, World Trade Organization, and the IMF are also expected in the room. They have been here from other sectors as well when it comes to the ambassadorial side. So there's a lot to discuss and there's a lot expected in this first meeting. It is over 4 days, but it is taken as one meeting, and that just gives you an idea of how massive this particular presidency of South Africa is going to be over the next 12 months.
Certainly a lot of meetings within meetings that are taking place, and now you have that meeting, the 2-day meeting between the ambassadors as well as foreign ministers. Tell us what the outcome of those meetings were.
One of the most important things that actually came out in the past 2 days, as we heard from the leaders of that particular track of Sherpas, is the fact that the world is unfair to poorer and developing countries. When you look at what the World Trade Organization has also admitted to in the interview that our colleague Ntokozo Khumalo had yesterday with the World Trade Organization, is that trade is unfair, and you have countries that have a monopoly on certain products, and they sometimes decide that they are not going to export some of those products. It's still happening. The restrictive trade barriers are still taking place. We saw it with India when it came to 2020 in the height of the pandemic, where they stopped exporting rice, where they also stopped exporting generic vaccines. And it's something that is important to note that since that time, you've seen a number of countries saying we're not going to export these particular products that are actually important to the world. And when you look at Ukraine, for example, when it comes to those farming products, when it comes to those agricultural products, the feed and so forth, the world went into a wobble because of that particular war between Russia and Ukraine. Why do they have such a monopoly? Why can't a continent like Africa, that has 60% of the world's most arable land, become self-sufficient when it comes to these agricultural products? Those are some of the discussions, and it is about opening those trade barriers, making sure that you don't sideline the developing world, and the global south is here to share that message with the developed world.
Thank you so much, Xolani Mbanjwa there, our business editor here at Channel 405.